Last lesson, we have finished the section on interest rate swaps. In this lesson, we'll start section 3, currency swaps. Both interest rate swaps and currency swaps are called rate swaps. In a currency swap, two parties involved exchange cash flows in different currencies. A currency swap agreement requires a principal to be specified in each of the two currencies. The principal amounts are usually exchanged at both the beginning and the end of the life of the swap. Usually, principal amounts are chosen to be approximately equivalent using the exchange rate at the time the swap is initiated. Here's an example. Consider a 4-year currency swap between A and B initiated on February 1st, 2009. Company A pays a fixed interest rate of 11% in Great British Pound and receives a fixed interest rate of 8% in US dollars. Interest rate payments are made once a year, and the principal amounts are 15 million US dollars and 10 million Great British Pound. The following table shows the cash flows to A for the lifespan of the swap. All figures are in millions. On February 1st, 2009, when the swap is initiated, both parties exchange the principals. Thus, A has a cash inflow of 10 million Great British Pound and a cash outflow of 15 million US dollars. Subsequently, on February 1st of 2010, 2011, and 2012, both parties exchanged the interest payments on the principal amounts specified. Since A pays 11% interest rate on 10 million Great British Pound and receives 8% interest rate on 15 million US dollars, it has a cash outflow of 1.1 million Great British Pound and a cash inflow of 1.2 million US dollars. On February 1st, 2013, when the two parties exchange their last interest payments, the principal amounts being swapped at the beginning of the contract have to be exchanged back. Thus, A has a total of 16.2 million US dollar cash inflow and 11.1 million Great British Pound cash outflow. In what kind of situation do we need currency swaps? Now let's consider the following scenario. The table listed the fixed rates available to Party A and Party B in US dollars and Japanese yen. Suppose A wants to take out a fixed rate loan in Japanese yen and B wants to take out a fixed rate loan in US dollars. Assume further that A is relatively more competitive in the US dollar market than in the Japanese yen market. That is, we have YB minus YA less than DB minus DA. And equivalently, B is relatively more competitive in the Japanese yen market than the US dollar market. That is, DA minus DB is less than YA minus YB. Since both A and B are more competitive in their opposite market, they can consider the alternative arrangement. A borrows US dollars, B borrows Japanese yen, and they enter into a currency swap. With this swap, A and B exchange principal at the beginning and the end of the life of swap, and this allows both A and B to effectively obtain a loan in their desired currency. The total gain to all parties is the difference of DB minus DA and YB minus YA %, which must be distributed in such a way that the cost to each party is less than that of the original scenario. Consider the following exact borrowing rates that A and B face. The interest rates of US dollar loan for both A and B are 9% and 12% respectively, and that of Japanese yen are 10% and 11% respectively. Party A desires a Japanese yen loan and B wants a US dollar loan. Can you arrange a currency swap between A and B? Note that the rate differential in US dollar loans is 3%, and that in the Japanese yen is 1%. Thus, a currency swap with a total saving of 2% is possible. Here's a possible arrangement which is beneficial to all parties. A pays to the bank 9.5% interest rate on Japanese yen and receives 9% interest rate on US dollars. Together with the borrowing rate of 9% on US dollars from the market, it has a net borrowing rate of 9.5% on Japanese yen, which is less than the borrowing rate of Japanese yen it could get directly from the market. For party B, it pays to the bank 11.5% interest rate on US dollars and receives 11% interest rate on Japanese yen. Together with the borrowing rate of 11% on Japanese yen from the market, it has a net borrowing rate of 11.5% on US dollars, which is also less than the borrowing rate of US dollars it could get directly from the market. With the above arrangement on principal amount of 1 million US dollars and 100 million Japanese yen, the bank makes an annual gain of 0.025 million US dollars and an annual loss of 1.5 million Japanese yen. Thus, the bank bears some currency risk, but neither A nor B bears any currency risk. Note that the currency risk can be redistributed but not eliminated. The valuation of currency swaps is similar to that of interest rate swaps. Assume no default risk. The currency swap for either A or B is equivalent to taking a long position in bond in one currency and a short position in bond in the other currency. For B in the earlier example, the swap is equivalent to a long position in an 11% Japanese yen bond and a short position in an 11.5% US dollar bond. The pricing formula of the swap for B is given by S times PY minus PD, where PD is the value of the US dollar bond in US dollars, and PY is the value of Japanese yen bond in Japanese yen, and S is the spot Japanese yen to US dollar exchange rate. The value of a currency swap therefore depends on the term structures of interest rates in the currencies concerned and the spot exchange rate. Let's consider the following example. Suppose that the currency swap for the earlier example with principal amounts of 1 million US dollars and 100 million Japanese yen has remaining 3 years of life. The payments are made once a year. Assume that the spot exchange rate is 120 Japanese yen per 1 US dollar, and the term structure are flat in both nations, 8% in the United States and 9% in Japan. Determine the value of the swap for B. Since B receives the interest on 100 million Japanese yen and pays the interest on 1 million US dollars, for the first 2 years, it has cash inflows of 11 million Japanese yen and cash outflows of 0.115 million US dollars. For the third year, both parties need to exchange the principal. Thus, B has a cash inflow of 111 million Japanese yen and a cash outflow of 1.115 million US dollars. Given the interest rates in both countries are flat for the 3 years, assuming they both compounded continuously, it is straightforward to obtain the equivalent bond prices in both Japanese yen and US dollars. With the given spot exchange rate, we can get the swap value in US dollars. Now we have finished chapter 3. In this chapter, we studied the swaps, including commodity swaps, interest rate swaps, and currency swaps. For the commodity swap, it can be regarded as a series of forward contracts, and thus can be valued using the concepts of forwards. For the rate swap, they are equivalent to taking a long position in one bond and a short position in another. Thus, the valuation of which is closely related to determining bond prices. In addition, we have also introduced the scenarios when the swaps are useful, and how to arrange the swaps so that all parties involved would benefit. Next chapter, we will go back to forward and futures contracts. We will emphasize those on interest rates and currencies, as they are widely used in daily financial practices.